to build into the racketeering charge. The racketeering charge is really unique in the sense that it's very broad in scope. You know, other charges such as sex trafficking or transportation to engage in prostitution have much more narrowly defined elements, but racketeering just points to this overall general criminal enterprise. So if you have evidence like prosecution is saying of him trying to contact third parties, intimidate witnesses, that helps to amplify that charge.
We have another update from court. Appreciate that, by the way, Elizabeth. So another update from court. Judge Subramanian. Good afternoon, Mr. Combs. Combs says, good afternoon. How are you doing today? Judge said, great. What can we take care of today? Assistant U.S. Attorney Emily Johnson says we will produce all discovery by the end of this year. By the way, Safa, is that surprising that they're able to produce, I mean, all of the discovery? I know they're in their letter they said there might be more discovery that comes in that they have to produce. This was an indictment in September. It's December now. We are talking about a ton of information. There's been a whole back and forth about what material can be viewed or when it can be viewed by Sean Combs on a laptop at the MDC. Are you surprised? It feels fast. They're able to turn all this over, no?
It's been turned over pretty quickly, in my opinion. And you know what? Between the time that he was indicted, until this point in time, I think there's a pretty good track record for how far they've gotten in their discovery disclosures. Now, with respect to discovery, and there was a scheduling order, I believe, that was issued by the judge that also would have had a compliance date as to at what point the prosecution should have completed their disclosures. But discovery also is an ongoing process. I expect that there is voluminous discovery and a lot of information and material that was obtained by the U.S. Attorney's Office in this case. Again, recalling that there were, I believe, 3 raids on 3 separate properties with respect to Mr. Combs. And so all of that information has to be extracted. Those devices have to be extracted, cell phones, tablets, computers. All of those things are constantly being worked on. So although I expect it seems that they're going to be having turned over everything by the 31st, there could be other discovery that comes up later past December 31st that they will also have to continue to turn over.
Okay, we have another update from court. AUSA Johnson, prosecutor in this case, our investigation is ongoing. The judge says, can you tell me how you're complying with the Brady obligations, which we just spoke about? Prosecutor says, we are endeavoring to get them the information they are requesting, including interrogations we conducted. We've given files from victim 1, and you and I both know, Elizabeth, that there is strong evidence to suggest victim 1 is Cassandra Ventura. What do you make of that back and forth?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And the fact that they also want to be able to get access to the interrogations, I think, is key. One of the strong themes that we've seen by Combs's defense is that, you know, the way that the prosecution has been handling the case, the tactics that they've used. Saw an order that week of the judge ruling that Combs's request for a motion and a hearing to
Jellyfish is permanent lighting so good it should be on the naughty list. Invisible in the day and brilliant at night for all your holidays. Fa la ooh la la. I'm talking Christmas, Halloween, 4th of July, game day, whatever. It's the gift that keeps on lighting. All backed by industry-leading customer satisfaction. Yes, an almost perfect 5-star rating. That's better than the movie Elf. And Jellyfish installs everything for you because dealing with ladders sucks. Did I mention you can jellyfish more than your house? Patios? Landscaping? Simply put, if you want it lit, Jellyfish will make it lit. So click below now and give yourself the gift of Jellyfish. 'Tis the season to be jelly. It's beautiful.
help determine the video of him assaulting Cassandra Ventura was leaked by the government, which the judge denied. So I think there's a lot of focus on his defense team on the tactics that have been played by the prosecution and how they've gone about prosecuting so
But in
far.
terms of exculpatory material, I would suggest, right, they are still trying to put forward this narrative that she's not telling the truth about the relationship, right? The idea that, you know, if she's running away in that 2016 video, it's not evident she's running away from a freak-off, from sex trafficking. You know, he's in his towel and allegedly beating her in a hotel hallway. But the idea of this is a domestic spat, I guess they're trying to find something in there that says if she really is their star witness, either A, she's not credible, or B, this is not evidence of racketeering or sex trafficking, right?
Yeah, I think that's a point that they've tried to hone in on many times. You know, earlier we saw before the video leaked and when she first filed her lawsuit in November of last year that, you know, they tried to frame it as this is a toxic, ongoing 10-year relationship with ups and downs. Obviously, when that video came out, it painted a very different picture. So I think a continuous tactic that we see by his team is trying to point that, as you said, her running away is not necessarily evidence of her running away from a potential sex trafficking situation, but possibly engaging in consensual act, and she's therefore leaving. That's what I think his team is trying to hone in on.
We are getting some great questions right now, so I want to combine two of them. And Saf, I'm going to go to you. This is a question from Jet. All we have heard about is Cassandra. Where's the others? Where are the other co-conspirators? Where's the superseding indictment? And let me couple that with another question from Irina Dmitrieva. What is the deadline to bringing a superseding indictment?
Yeah, so those co-conspirators and those other victims, we don't know where they are as of yet. Right now, it seems that they're in the grand jury proceedings and process, and so those proceedings are done in secret. We don't know who's there. We don't know who's testifying. It very well could be additional victims who will ultimately be the basis for additional charges, or they could be convening those grand juries in an event to indict other co-conspirators. What the government is more than likely going to do or has been doing is identifying potential co-conspirators, interviewing them, and getting them to flip on Mr. Combs to bolster their evidence. And so that's something that is likely taking place at this time. We won't have any information yet until there's an indictment or a superseding indictment, which we would expect will likely take place before trial.
Well, interesting you should say that. I've said this before with the other times we were doing these hearings. It's almost like the judge and the prosecutors and the defense are listening to this, because what just happened in court? The judge says, when can you tell me about your ongoing investigation and any superseding indictment? The prosecutor, AOSA Johnson, says, I can't say much. We're mindful of the trial date. Any additional charges will have little discovery information. Little discovery? What does that mean? That means there's... I mean, if you're going to bring new charges, wouldn't that delay the trial?
Yeah, I think, or one thing that it could possibly mean is that the new information and potentially new indictments, a lot of the evidence that helps support that is evidence that's already been put forward. You know, because again, I think you have several people involved in Combs's team that helped facilitate a lot of these acts, what's being alleged, right? So I think if anything, what that means is the prosecution is mindful that, hey, if we're going to bring in additional charges, we'll make sure to do it in time so that the defense has a chance to respond and prepare their defense, obviously, but that a lot of the discovery that helps support that has already been disclosed and overlaps with a lot of the other charges. That's what I would imagine.
We got a question from Mandarin. Who else was in that hotel room? I'll answer that really quickly. There has been allegations that there was a sex worker in that hotel room back in 2016, which, again, if that's a key witness for the prosecution to establish that this was an instance of a freak-off, this was instance of sex trafficking, that Cassandra Ventura, assuming she is one of the cooperating witnesses, in this case one of the witnesses, one of the victims in this case, that she was coerced into that. This is further evidence of that. Okay, we have an update from the court. So the judge asked the defense, defense, what do you think about this superseding indictment? Combs' lawyer Mark Agnifilo says the pattern of racketeering activities is very vague. They allege multiple acts of arson and kidnapping, but what events? We anticipate a motion for a bill of particulars coming to the court. Saf, I'll go to you. Do you think it is vague? And explain to everybody, what is a bill of particulars?
Okay. So a bill of particulars is essentially a pleading that we file with the court saying, Judge, we don't have enough information to properly defend ourselves against these allegations. We are now asking for the government to particularize with specificity what in other words they are alleging against us and how they intend to prove it. What specific act constitutes as kidnapping? What specific act, time, date, and place constitutes the arson? And those are the underlying charges in the Racketeering Act. So what the defense is trying to do here is get a little bit more clear information so that they can adequately prepare their defense with respect to this.
And by the way, I believe the arson is with respect to the allegation of Kid Cudi, that Sean Combs had blew up Kid Cudi's car. That was something that was first echoed in Sandra Ventura's complaint, her civil lawsuit that was filed back in November. Quick follow-up on this. I mean, how much is the defense entitled to know about this case? Obviously, they're getting discovery, but don't they need a little bit more of an explanation from the prosecution, what the exact charges are, who the witnesses are, what this case is going to look like? Because I think the argument would be, aren't they going to be blindsided? I mean, don't they have an opportunity to present a defense?
Well, one of the important things that has to happen is as we get discovery in our cases, we have to plan for everything. We have to prepare, and what I usually like to do is I'd like to go witness by witness. Any name that is listed in that discovery, I'm generating a file for, I'm investigating that individual, we're looking at the specific allegations in the discovery and in the police paperwork or government paperwork that connects that particular witness to this particular act or activity on a particular, again, time, date, and place, and what information they essentially could be providing and what they will likely testify to at trial. So as defense attorneys, we have to sort of think about that and prepare for that as well. It's not always that the prosecutor is going to disclose that. So we have to be prepared for anything in those situations.
Another update from court. Combs' lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, says, if what happened in Mr. Combs' bedroom was found to be entirely personal, we'd view that as subject to Brady, meaning exculpatory information. The judge said, should I deny without prejudice, meaning you can refile it, should I deny without prejudice the request made, understanding that the government will engage in a dialogue with you? So again, this is about the exchange of Brady material. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's difficult. You know, I understand the statement that his team is making and that certain information that might be evidence from his bedroom or certain private places would be prone to exculpatory evidence. The problem is that so much of the evidence surrounding this case is extremely personal and would depend on evidence from those types of places. So I think it's the defense team has a tougher time really trying to parse out what could be exculpatory, what's not relevant, what might be more private, because the allegations are premised on such personal acts.
Because he's not charged with sexual assault or battery just per se. Right. This is greater than this. This is a symptom of a sex trafficking operation, a racketeering operation. So there's things more here. I want to just go back to you, Elizabeth. I have an interesting question for you. This is from Joyce Tarsick. How did this even get to Diddy getting indicted? I clearly didn't pay attention. First of all, Joyce, thank you so much for watching. Shame on you, okay? You haven't been watching our live shows. You haven't been watching Sidebar. You haven't been watching Crime Fix. You haven't been watching any of our news packages. I'll allow you to briefly explain how Sean Combs was.
Yeah, so I keep saying it, but I think so much of it has to go to Cassie Ventura, that she filed in November 2020. Up until that point, at least, people really hadn't heard much about Diddy in terms of, you know, these type of allegations. You know, there might have been court cases and things like that. Obviously, the shooting incident that happened
I'm so happy with my results.
Add volume to the cheeks together that looks like you, with smooth, natural-looking results that last up to 2 years. Ask your licensed specialist about the longest-lasting HA cheek filler, Juvederm, true to you. For more important safety information and to find a licensed specialist, visit Juvederm.com.
shooting incident that happened in the 90s, but really what happened was in November 2023, Cassie Ventura filed her complaint against him, alleging, that she was sex trafficked, that she was subject to assault and many other, horrible acts. And then once that was filed, we saw a slew of many other lawsuits. Now I think probably in the hundreds of people alleging the same thing. So I think that was what probably led the federal government to start paying attention to this, to also realize that this wasn't just a one-time incident with a one-time victim, that it led to many, many other incidences. And what we saw was raids happening in the spring of Combs's various homes. And then in May 2024, just to break down the timeline, we saw that leak of that video of Cassandra Ventura being assaulted. Government was probably still trying to gather their evidence. Then September 2024, we saw he was indicted with sex trafficking, with racketeering and transportation to engage in prostitution.
Yep, and we have another update from court. This is about this motion regarding the Brady material. Mark Agnifilo, Sean Combs' defense attorney, says, "We prefer you to keep the motion open. We plan to expand it to asking for more specifics." Judge Subramanian says, "Based on what I've heard, there's going to be a dialogue," meaning a dialogue between the prosecution and the defense. "I'm willing to leave the motion open as long as you know I am not ignoring it." Okay, so I want to go to you for another question we have. This is from Nicolette DeCong. Just to set the stage again, there is a live hearing happening right now in Combs' criminal case in Manhattan. It's about discovery, it is about evidence, it is about a superseding indictment, it is about potentially turning over exculpatory information. We will see what else is discussed here. But this question for you, Safa, any update on his assistant and other staff that have direct access and knowledge to all of this? Are they subpoenaed by the grand jury as well?
There's a really good chance that those individuals have been subpoenaed by the grand jury or by the U.S. Attorney's Office for a grand jury presentation. To my point earlier, those potential co-conspirators are those individuals, the assistants, anybody who may have booked a hotel, driven a car to transport someone somewhere, set up lighting in any hotel room. All of those individuals can be deemed co-conspirators. And so what is likely taking place, or what has likely taken place, is that the U.S. Attorney's Office has identified these individuals and said, okay, well, we're looking for your cooperation with this. We expect for you to testify in grand jury and to continue to cooperate with our investigation and prosecution, and we will forgo charging you with anything. So essentially, coming into an agreement so that they can continue forward with their prosecution while these individuals avoid being prosecuted themselves.
Want a quick update from Joyce Tarsick, who I was joking around with, who said, "How did this all start?" I was just kidding, because she wrote, "Okay, I will do the walk of shame. I'm sorry I didn't follow. My bad." I was just kidding. First of all, I'm actually happy you asked that question, because sometimes it's good to do a 360-degree, analysis of where we're at. How did we get here? Appreciate the question. I was just kidding with you. Okay, we do have a question here, though, from Bree Smith. If Combs takes a plea, will that stop the trial from further investigation? So I'll ask you that, and also the likelihood that he would actually take a plea deal.
Yeah, so if he takes a plea, essentially, most of the time when that happens, the trial doesn't proceed forward. He pleads guilty, let's say, to all of the charges or some of them. I think if he were to take a plea, the prosecution would give a very hard time in not allowing him to plead to just one. They'd pressure him to plead to all. So that's typically what happens, is when a plea takes place, the trial doesn't go forward, obviously. The likelihood of that happening, I think, is very low. Yep. He's had chances to do that within the past few months. I think his attorneys are taking a very aggressive stance on this, which they're his defense attorneys. They have done a defense for him. I think the narratives that he stuck to in terms of his defense of these are consensual acts, these are consenting adults, these things didn't take place, I think we're going to see that continue to mount further. So I don't think it's likely.
Because he probably thinks he might have a good defense, and if he takes a plea, prison time is going to be on the table, and significant prison time on the table. You don't like this. You don't hold a press conference talking about what he did for years and basically saying, they basically called him a monster and a predator. You don't do that unless you are going to move forward with significant prison time. I don't think you'd agree to it. probably would say, let me take my chances. If I lose, at least I'm not forfeiting my chance to appeal it. And the time it takes to appeal it, I mean, is probably less time than the amount I would agree at a plea deal. So I want to go back. We have an update from court. The judge says to Mr. Agnifilo, any other discovery issues? Mr. Agnifilo, again, Sean Combs' lawyer, says no. The judge says, so on to schedule. By January 3rd, provide the court with any update on the motion schedule. The court's goal is to avoid any kind of surprise at the last minute. Let's meet March 17th. By the way, Safa, are you shocked this is going to potentially go to trial in May of 2025? I mean, assuming there's not a superseding indictment, and assuming if it is a superseding indictment, it doesn't substantially change the case.
Absolutely. I'm not too surprised in the sense that this is a high-profile case. The position that Mr. Combs and his attorneys have taken is that they want to address this as quickly as possible. And Mr. Combs has a right to a speedy trial. So it is not surprising that it looks like we're on track to begin trial in March, or excuse me, not March, but May, and that the adherence to that schedule is being taken serious by both sides. So not really a surprise there. I do expect that if there's a superseding indictment, the likelihood of the trial being delayed will be highly likely, even if there is not any additional discovery that's provided.
That's a good point. I agree. And I also let you know that court has officially adjourned. This was a quicker hearing. We're still going to break down. And also, if there are any or anything that happened to that courtroom, we're going to hold it for you. We're going to hold it live. And also, we're waiting for Elizabeth Milner to come out. We want to see what her reaction is and what she observed of Sean Combs in that courtroom. Before I do that, we have more questions. This is a really interesting one. This is a question from Studio 310. What are the chances of ever finding out who the female celebrity is? Will we ever know? I think what this is in relation to is one of the lawsuits that was filed by a woman who claims that she was sexually abused by Sean Combs when she was 13 years old back in 2000 at the VMAs. And she has also sued Jay-Z, saying that he was celebrity A who abused her, but there was a celebrity B, an unnamed female celebrity B who was in that room, has not been named as a defendant. We don't know who that person is. This is a lawsuit that was brought by Tony Busby, a Texas attorney who has filed numerous lawsuits against Sean Combs. What do you think? We'll ever find out who that